Hello and welcome to Dialogue Options. My name is Ellen and I'm joined this week by Josh and Alex. And we're going to be talking about whether spoilers and leaks affect your enjoyment of a game. So I thought we'd start out by talking about The Last of Us Part 2 because it's something that we all played and it's something that I think we all experienced spoilers of in one way or another. So if we start by just talking about what we had spoiled from the game and at what point upon release we played it, if that makes sense. So, Alex, do you want to go first?
Yeah, so I reviewed the game, so I played it I started playing about 3.5 weeks before release. And in terms of spoilers, I saw one image of Joel's sort of battered face on the floor in a reply to a tweet. And I sort of like tried to forget it in my mind and not think about it or dwell on it. And then I can't remember where I saw it, but I also knew that there would be another playable protagonist, and that it was who we now know as Abby, that it was the woman who was in, I think it was the Paris Games Week trailer.
The one with the Seraphites, where she's...
Yeah. So I knew those things, but I also knew like false spoilers, if that makes sense, because there's a lot of misinformation going around the internet. So I saw someone had said Joel and Ellie die, and I was like, okay, good to know that going in, but obviously Ellie doesn't die. So in a way that kind of helped because I was expecting something and then got a completely different thing in the end. But yeah, obviously the majority of the stuff I had spoiled for me was true, but it was, in a weird way, it was nice to have that misinformation out there, not knowing what I could trust and whether that affected the experience.
That's interesting straight off the bat, that not only did you have spoilers, but you had wrong ones, and you kind of liked them, which is a point of view I've not heard before.
I could only like them in hindsight because obviously at the time I thought they were real.
Yeah.
Like I didn't.
At what point did you go, "Oh, that was nice, actually"?
Yeah, because I wouldn't know why anyone would share. I know why people would share real spoilers, but why would they share like make-believe spoilers? That makes no sense to me. Like, why would you spend your time doing that? But then looking back, and I go, thank you, internet user 66, like for completely subverting what I thought was going to happen with something that didn't happen at all.
I think each of you need to take a serious re-examination of the way that you use the internet, because I'm effectively spoiler-free, baby. I got no spoilers going into Last of Us 2. I think the only thing I knew going in was that it had two protagonists or two playable characters, but I wouldn't necessarily consider that a spoiler, if only because there was precedent set for it with obviously the original Last of Us, which let you play as Joel and Ellie through the majority of the game, and Ellie in Winter for an hour or two. But yeah, no, I think for me at least, I'm glad I didn't know that Joel died before, because I would have been anticipating it. But I don't think the game itself didn't do a fantastic job of hiding the fact that was going to happen very quickly. Like, even I know he appears in the trailer, and he appeared in one or two of the trailers, and he was body swapped for Jesse. But even that, modern media has a history of doing that, particularly when it comes to Marvel and DC movies. They mess around with false trailers and false scenes all the time, so it's not even like that was, particularly new. But yeah, it was signposted fairly obviously in the game in the opening sort of 20 minutes. So I was shocked because I love Joel, but I wasn't all that surprised.
It's weird, like you saying that when you know certain things are, even if it's super vague, like something happens halfway through. Do you find, because it's how I see it, is I can't help but get tunnel vision for whatever I think is coming. So knowing that Joel's death was coming, certain things that were happening in the game, I was thinking of it through the lens of, is this the time he's going to die? Is he going to die now? Is this what's going to kill him, kind of thing? And seeing that scene where Abby finds out who Joel is, recognizes his name, it then cuts to her looking at a golf club, and obviously that's that was very prominent in my mind, that it's a golf club that she uses because it's, you know, stands out more than a gun or a knife, whatever. So as soon as that happened, I was like, okay, this is what's. I mean, I agree that it was very visceral, and no amount of spoilers and comments could take away from how it felt watching that. But I definitely get affected in ways that I don't immediately recognize by spoilers, because I will just be thinking, I know that something bad happens, so is this the bad thing? Is this the bad and I don't know whether I'm ever 100% in a game where I'm anticipating even like the vaguest of, like, so like when someone says there's a twist in a film, then you spend most of the film going, could the twist be this? And you're like 80% present in the film, but 20% going, I'm gonna figure this twist out before it happens, and gonna be great. So I feel like spoilers at the base level are annoying, because let that thing happen to me, don't you be telling me that. But it also affects me in that way, where I'm not 100% present in the moment.
Yeah, and the weird thing with spoilers, or the thing that I think frustrates people with spoilers, regardless of you know, the entertainment medium, or sports, you know, it's information without context that sets expectation. So, you know, by having something spoiled for you, in the Last of Us case, you know, spoiled by people that hadn't played the entire game or had heard it. I can't even remember where the leaked information came from. It was a data breach, if I remember correctly. Is that right, Alex?
Yeah, someone hacked into it and just put the footage on Reddit.
Right, yeah. So, you know, to sit there and get all of these spoilers, and then to have them disseminated out across the internet in various forms, sort of robbed of their initial context, it sets this false sense of expectation of what's going to happen, why it's happening. You know, and it takes the original intent away from the creator. So that's frustrating, because now you're playing this game through a lens that you never wanted to experience it in. You're playing it through however you discover the information, which obviously isn't perfect. To
go on the flip side of that, I do think there can be value in knowing spoilers. Like, you know, Josh was talking about expectation. It can almost build a sense of anticipation. So, you know, like you were saying, Ellen, with noticing those little things, like the way Abby looks at Joel when she figures out his name, and then she looks at the golf club. You know, you wouldn't have picked up on those details if you didn't know necessarily. And so it can almost build a better sense of appreciation for what's coming. And it's also the thing about, you know, who determines what a spoiler is. Like, Naughty Dog could have easily come out and promoted The Last of Us Part 2 as a game where you play as two characters. I don't see why it couldn't have done that. You know, and if you look at something like Destiny 2 with the Forsaken expansion, you know, Bungie just came out of the gate and said, yeah, you know, this fan favorite character in Cade is going to die. You know, we're going to show his death as a trailer. And then, you know, suddenly people are okay about it. Whereas, you know, if somehow they hadn't talked about that and that had leaked, people would be very sort of angry in a way. And if you look at something like Uncharted 2, you know, Naughty Dog could have not revealed the train wreck and that whole thing about, you know, Nate being on his last legs and on death's door, but that was sort of the centerpiece of their promotion. You know, the game starts with that moment of the train wreck. The train wreck's on the front cover, and then as a result of that, knowing that that's going to happen, you know, you spend the rest of the campaign leading up to that going, when's the train wreck? When's it going to happen? Like, when's Nate going to be, you know, at this lowest point in his life? Like, it builds this real sense of tension. And so I guess for me, it's like, I'm not as annoyed by spoilers as some people, because I go, okay, well, you know, sure, maybe it would have been better if I hadn't known, but I'm just going to take this, you know, as an opportunity to see where the seeds are being laid for the storyteller in terms of moments leading up to that. So
just to jump in, Alex, because your first point about knowing information, and then that obviously helping to set expectation when you're going through it, right? So, you know, picking up details that you might have otherwise not picked up on. that's kind of that's what the point of something like replayability is. Or,
That's what I was gonna say.
you know, like you're supposed to pick up on those details when you go through it a second time. Same with movies, you know, one of the benefits or one of the best things about rewatching John Carpenter or Stanley Kubrick or even a Quentin Tarantino movie is going through it time and time again. Once you've got your head around the basic story structure and the characters and their motivations, is going back over and over and just looking for little details that you missed. And you know, I'll be able to go back to some of my favorite movies. I don't know, The Thing, or you know, even some Coen Brother movies. They're really good for it. Going back and even 10, 20 years later, still finding little details that I never picked up on the first time around. There's always a real joy in that for me. So like the golf club scene, I bet if I was to go back and find the energy to replay through 30 harrowing hours of Last of Us 2, I'm sure there's plenty of little details like that sprinkled all through it, lots of foreshadowing and bits like that, just because obviously Hallie Gross and Neil Druckmann are fantastic writers. And yeah, I don't know if maybe you're getting the what you'd get on a replay sort of early, but not, you know, by having spoilers, I suppose.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I agree with the general sentiment that it's probably best to play something without knowing going in first. But like I don't, and like you may have lost something by having something spoiled for you. I don't know, I just try and treat it as like a glass half full situation where I go, okay, well I know this now. You know, let's sort of almost treat it as if I'm replaying it, and I can see it with a certain set of eyes that I wouldn't have had if, you know, I'd played it for the first time. But you know, I totally agree that, you know, that's something that probably should be done on a second playthrough, or a second viewing of a movie. It's the world we live in, where you often have stuff spoiled for you ahead of time.
Yeah, and to your second point, sorry, just to jump back in, but to your second point with respect to the way that, for example, Cade was killed, or the death of Cade was sort of presented by Bungie ahead of time. It's really interesting how marketing works in that respect, because Naughty Dog could quite easily have come up early and said, Joel dies, this is a story of revenge. And that's what I think, you know, and people would have accepted that going in. I think that a lot of the backlash, if you could call it that, has been from people unhappy that Joel dies in the, you know, opening hour because they wanted to play as him. I would imagine is probably one of the complaints. You know, if they'd have been upfront about that, I don't think they should have been, but you know, if they'd have been upfront about that, it's something we would have just accepted. His death would have been no less shocking, I imagine, but you know, we would be prepared for it. Just same in the way that Bungie announced that Cade was going to die. It's, you know, with live service stuff, you got to get players back in any way that you can. So for them to announce that this fan favorite character is going to sort of lose their position in the game, people come flooding back in, they're excited to learn how it happens and why it happens, and it creates this whole other dynamic. So I guess you're right, it is about contextualizing what isn't a spoiler. I think we've gotten very bad at just deciding that any information about anything is a spoiler, literally by its very nature, which isn't the case. But yeah, I don't know.
I think one angle of spoilers that is kind of unique to gaming in particular, like you talk about how knowing a spoiler makes it almost feel like you're playing something through the second time because you're appreciating the foreshadowing and stuff. But in certain games where perhaps the story can hinge on decisions that you make as the player, for example, I had Red Dead Redemption 2 spoiled for me because I was playing as Arthur, and there's certain golden guns, I don't know if that's the exact term, but there's special guns that you can get in the game. You have to go out and find them. I found one and it was on the map, and for some reason I just couldn't get to it. Like I couldn't find it in this little space that I was in. So I went to a guide, and in the guide they are playing as John Marston. And so I instantly had it spoiled for me that clearly Arthur dies, and in the same way that the first one had you then playing as John's son, in this one you're now playing as John. And
So what you're saying is you're using this video as an opportunity to call Leon out. It's very nice of you. Well done.
No, it wasn't. No. So what I'm saying is, with that, I'm pretty sure I would have played Arthur as like a high honor character anyway. But with this, I don't even think I was halfway through the game when I had that spoiled for me. So I just had this in the back of my head. You're making decisions on behalf of someone who is going to die at some point. You don't want him to go out as like this honorless thug. You want to make the right decisions so that when he dies honorably. And I think that applies to quite a few games that I've had, even minor spoilers, where I've thought, this character can die, that's going to change my decisions because I don't want that to happen, or maybe I do want that to happen. So I think that's something that only can really apply to games where the decisions that you have to make can be shaped by something that someone has spoiled for you in some way.
Can I jump in very quickly? I think
Go ahead.
I was going to say, I think that I understand what you're saying about Red Dead, and I do agree. I think if I'd have found out about that ahead of time, I would have been annoyed, but having played through it... Okay, so with Red Dead, I don't mind that Arthur dies, if only because he had such a well-realized arc. It became fairly apparent, halfway through that game that he does have you could see the character turning, and you could see the gears turning, and the character trying to adapt to the situation he's in and not particularly enjoying it, and wondering whether he needs a change. So you get this full character arc with him, and he does obviously die at the end, and it's quite sad depending on the choices that you've made. But it felt earned, it felt fitting, and then to continue on as John that leads into obviously the original Red Dead kind of makes sense. I think for me, if I could erase a spoiler from my mind to go back and play a game in fresh, and this is a Final Fantasy VII spoiler I've got here for you, so this is a pre-warning. I don't know what's happening in remake, so it might not be the case, but this is a 1996 spoiler. One of the reasons that game is so absolutely unbelievably legendary is because of its story and sort of how mature it felt at the time. It was telling a different type of story that we didn't traditionally have in Western RPGs in particular. But Aerith dying, 30, 40 hours into the game, maybe less, but anyway, Aerith dying completely out of the blue, somebody that's been a central part of your squad, your team, you've invested experience, skill points, gear, everything. This character has been a central part of your party. She's effectively the only healer. And for her to just die and then be taken away was so unbelievably shocking, because it was so surprising. It was just it was unbelievable. And I think that's kind of what made that game so great. And if that had been spoiled ahead of time, I think a lot of the impact, all of the impact would have been lost, because I know that every single time I've replayed Final Fantasy VII, I just don't bother investing in Aerith, because she's gone at some point by, I think it's disc 2. So those kind of spoilers are super impactful, and that's why Square Enix, I don't know if they still do this, but I know this from covering it in retro publications, but if you got an interview with anyone from Square Enix, they'd mandate that you couldn't talk about the death, that it would still be considered a spoiler for them. So they'd give you the access to whoever it might be from the development team, but under the pretense that you don't mention the fact that Aerith dies, because there are still people that could come across the game and experience it for the first time, and they don't want that ruined in a publication, which makes sense. But
it's weird because I get FOMO, so Last of Us was an exception because that series means a lot to me. But with regards to Star Wars and Avengers, as soon as the plots leaked, I looked them up, because
I'm surprised you hadn't brought that up yet, because I know that you look up spoilers.
Yeah, because
and I wanted to talk about that.
It annoys me that some people know this stuff and I don't.
Oh, so you don't want to lord it over you? You want to take that power away from the spoilers?
It doesn't sit well with me, the idea that there are lots of people out there who now know how Avengers Endgame ends, how Star Wars or Han Solo dies, and I didn't know that. So I would literally just I'd toy with the idea for 5 minutes. Like, should I? Shouldn't I? Like, I'm seeing it tomorrow. And then
Seeing it tomorrow.
oh yeah, I searched up Avengers: Infinity War ending on the way to the cinema, and like I honestly,
Sure,
it didn't ruin it for me.
That's what I've decided.
What was that, Josh?
I hate working with you. That's what I've decided.
That's a nice conclusion to come to.
But I'll never spoil anything for anyone else because I know that I'm very exceptional in that, weird in that way.
I know I'm pretty excited.
But I don't know, like if stuff comes out, I'm happy to look it up because I'd rather because I know probably it's going to be spoiled to me anyway, so I'd rather spoil it to myself on my own terms, if that makes sense.
On your own terms.
Anyway, when you're on route to the cinema, you're sitting down in the chair, right hand on a very expensive cup of Pepsi, and your left hand got your phone open, just scrolling idly through spoilers.
I don't drink Pepsi, Josh.
That's the flaw in his argument.
Yeah.
I am actually kind of an in-between of Josh being disgusted by that and Alex thinking he's exceptional. I do sometimes, and I did it with Game of Thrones, where I sometimes Google stuff knowing that it's very, very likely that even like the Google autocomplete is just gonna, like I typed in Catelyn Stark and then it went death afterwards, and I was like, oh, I'm gonna read it. I've broken the seal now. And I sometimes do it with Netflix shows where you can see the description. Sometimes I'll scroll down further and see the description of one of the later episodes. Particularly if it's a show where people get eliminated. Sometimes I'm like, I kind of want to see who hangs on now, just so I know who to root for and stuff. So I kind of do it sometimes. I would never do it en route to a cinema. That's absolute madness. But
That is madness.
yeah.
It was a long bus journey, all right?
A bus? Wait, were you with Becca? Your other half?
I was with a friend and I was like, do you want to look with me? And he said, yeah. And we did.
You did it together?
Yeah.
Some weird blood brothers.
There's dozens of us.
You should be in jail. That's what I think.
I'll actually be interested to see now if anyone who watches this video comments saying that they look for spoilers as well, because I would like to know if Alex is in, I mean, we know he's in a minority, but is he in a vast minority or is it slightly less significant than we think?
Why do you think that, like, our Last of Us ending feature and like ending features for all like the big stuff does so well on our site?
It's a very quick closing statement. I think, people should ultimately enjoy whatever it may be, entertainment in whatever form it may take, in whatever form they enjoy it. I don't think anyone should, as fun as it is to wind Alex up, enjoy what it is you want to enjoy in the way you want to enjoy it. Just don't be a dick and spoil it for other people. I think that the breadth of what a spoiler is and isn't has gotten wildly out of control over time. It's what is considered a spoiler now is very different to what was considered a spoiler 10 years ago or 20 years ago. But just be conscious of what other people have consumed and what other people are doing. And there's no need to go out of your way to spoil something that's, let's say, within a year, at the very least within a year. People play things and watch things and read things at their own pace, and in the case of The Last of Us 2, just to bring it back to that, it's a 30+ hour game. Some people are going to be chewing over that for months. Not everyone has a week like me where I can sit there and play it for 5-6 hours a day. So just be respectful. The nature of spoilers has changed and will continue to change. Game of Thrones just overhyped, sort of pushed it into this mad new area. But it's only you can decide what is and isn't a spoiler to you.
Yeah.
So just be respectful of that as you're navigating social media and Reddit and wherever else it may be.
I would echo that as well and say, like, it's not hard to not say anything. And if you are finding it difficult, like say you're talking to someone about a game they haven't yet played, like do what I do and have fun, like send them down false roads and just flat out lie to them. Yeah. Like everyone has their own way of consuming entertainment, and it's just basically sticking to your lane and not like spoiling that for others, regardless of what you think of how they, what they consider to be a spoiler or not. Like, you don't have to go out of your way to not spoil stuff for someone. So
Yeah. So, in summary, obviously, let us know your thoughts on spoilers in the comments below. But as a whole, let people enjoy things. Don't be a dick.